This is cold weather eating that I want all season long. I'm taking my time today in the kitchen to make a nice winter squash soup, which features the main ingredient, a delicata squash. I first learned about delicata squash when a friend gave one to me that she grew, and the magical thing about a delicata squash, you don't have to peel it. You can eat the skin after you cook it. If you can't find a delicata squash, you can substitute for butternut squash. You do have to peel butternut, and in fact, I'll add a little butternut squash to the soup today anyway. I'm starting out with the usual suspects for a flavor base or mirepoix: carrot, celery, onion, cutting everything into about a 1/4 inch dice. If you didn't have celery or carrot in the house, it's not a deal breaker. I've done this just with onion as a flavor base, and it's totally fine. Oh, that's a strong onion. You're looking for about a 1/4 to 1/2 cup of carrot, the same for celery, and then double that for the onion, along with 2 cloves of garlic, which I'll chop up next. I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of olive oil to our pot and getting it over a medium to medium-high heat to get us started. I'm going to add our carrots, celery, and onion all in. By the time they get softened, we'll add the garlic and I'll have our squash chopped up. I do like to lop off the top and bottom of the delicata squash just to give us a flat surface. And then I like to go straight down the middle. And you see we still have seeds we're going to scrape out. I find the best thing to use is just a regular little metal tablespoon or teaspoon. Really gets in and takes all of the guts and seeds very cleanly. And if you want to, you can save those seeds, clean off some of the pulp, and roast them off for a snack. I'm going to cut the squash a little bit larger than the initial vegetables, about a 1/2 inch dice. Sometimes it's nice to follow those green lines. As we get into smaller pieces, if there are any strange little growths or blemishes, now's a good time to just cut them out. All right, that's the last of our squash, all cut up into about 1/2 inch chunks. I also diced up our 2 cloves of garlic. It's about 2 teaspoons of garlic. I'm going to throw that into our vegetables now. Everything's gotten nice and soft. I'm also going to add a tablespoon of tomato paste. It won't taste tomatoey, but it gives it some nice umami. Okay, we've got some nice color from our tomato paste. All the initial vegetables are really soft, so I'm going to add in our squash. This is our delicata squash pieces. I also am adding about a cup of butternut squash I had left over from another recipe. I like the 2 different squashes. Squashes, I think just squash. Now that all of our veggies are in the pot, I'm going to add 4 cups of chicken stock. You could use veggie stock. I'm going to crank up the heat and bring this up to a boil before we add a few more components, and then we'll lower it back down to a simmer. Everything looks delicious. We've got a little bit of a boil going on, and so now I'm going to add 1/3 cup of rice. Whatever rice you have. This is actually rice I had left over from a risotto recipe. I just don't have enough to make another risotto batch, so that's what I'm using. I made this soup for the first time in the dead of winter, so I didn't have any fresh herbs. So this soup relies a lot on some dried herbs and spices, not being snobby if you don't have anything fresh. A teaspoon of dried tarragon. Tarragon is key here. A teaspoon of ground turmeric gives a great golden color. A teaspoon of dried dill, but if you had fresh, go ahead and use some fresh dill. 1/2 teaspoon of dried thyme. I like a little heat here, so 1/2 teaspoon of crushed red pepper. Give that all a stir. So I'm going to lower our soup to a simmer and let it go partially covered for about 20 minutes. Looks really good. Mainly we're waiting for our rice to cook, and that gives a nice bit of body to this soup. If it cooks down a bit too much, you can always add a little water back to give yourself a bit more liquid. I think I'm being supervised. How's it going today? You want some soup? I think that's a hard no. Okay, it's been 20 minutes. The rice is cooked. Our squash is nice and soft. At this point, I'm gonna add a little bit of fresh baby spinach, about a cup or so. Maybe just give it a little bit of a tear. I like that green. In the dead of winter, I've added about half a cup of a frozen chopped spinach. I love the addition of the spinach. I think it just gives it a nice look, and of course, a little bit more veggie nutrition. And right before you're ready to serve, add a tablespoon of a white balsamic vinegar or a squeeze of lemon. Really brightens up all of those flavors that have been cooking for a while. I'm also going to check for seasoning right now. It's salty enough, but we didn't add any black pepper earlier, just that red pepper flake, which I can detect. A little black pepper is good too. Oh yeah, nice and chunky with all the squash. Everything is that really golden yellow color from the turmeric. I think just a little bit of parsley torn over top could be nice. It's a little extra freshness. I have it. And I have a nice new block of Parmesan cheese, Parmigiano Reggiano. I think a little grating of that could be, oh, you know, killer. Oh yeah. Maybe a cracked pepper. Beautiful. This is what I want to eat all winter long. Winter squash soup featuring delicata squash and butternut. All the things. It's sweet from the squash. The butternut comes through, that tarragon, golden color, all of the textures and flavors. The rice gives it just enough body without being a rice soup. Go buy a delicata squash and make some winter squash soup. Guess I have to finish that. I first learned about delicata. They're nice and soft, the celery serrats. I'm gonna throw our minced garlic into our celery. I'm saying celery. Hello. Hi, it was fun to watch. You were seeing me get a close-up shot.